from Psalm 55. Give ear to my prayer, O God, and hide not yourself from my plea for mercy. Attend to me and answer me. I am restless in my complaint, and I moan because of the noise of the enemy, because of the oppression of the wicked. For they drop trouble upon me, and in anger they bear a grudge against me. My heart is in anguish within me. The terrors of death have fallen upon me. Fear and trembling come upon me, and horror overwhelms me. And I say, oh, that I had wings like a dove. I would fly away and be at rest. Yes, I would wander far away. I would lodge in the wilderness. I would hurry to find shelter from the raging wind and tempest. Destroy, O Lord, divide their tongues, for I see violence and strife in the city. Day and night they go around it, on its walls, and iniquity and trouble are within it. Ruin is in its midst. Oppression and fraud do not depart from its marketplace. For it is not an enemy who taunts me, then I could bear it. It is not an adversary who deals insolently with me, then I could hide from him. But it is you, a man, my equal, my companion, my familiar friend. We used to take sweet counsel together. Within God's house we walked in the throng. Let death steal over them. Let them go down to Sheol alive, for evil is in their dwelling place and in their heart. But I call to God, and the Lord will save me. Evening and morning and at noon, I utter my complaint and moan, and he hears my voice. He redeems my soul in safety from the battle that I wage. For many are arrayed against me. God will give ear and humble them, he who is enthroned from of old, because they do not change and do not fear God. My companion stretched out his hand against his friends. He violated his covenant. His speech was smooth as butter, yet war was in his heart. His words were softer than oil, yet they were drawn swords. Cast your burden on the Lord, and he will sustain you. He will never permit the righteous to be moved. But you, O God, will cast them down into the pit of destruction. Men of blood and treachery shall not live out half their days, but I will trust in you.
Maya, you could make a lot of money reading people to sleep, so thank you. That was well done. You pronounced Sheol perfectly, so great. Thank you for that. I've been trying to figure out, I'm Ryan, by the way, if we haven't met, one of the pastors here. I've been trying to figure out how to start this message, and I couldn't figure it out, so I'm just going to say it. I think you all are a bunch of complainers. I'm serious. Actually, I know you are. Psychologists say that the average person complains about 20 times a day. Some of you complain a lot more. I don't want to see any wives elbowing their husbands right now. Yeah, you're a bunch of Okay, so imagine you had a list. It was every complaint that's been in your head or come out of your mouth for the last 30 days. So 20 on average times 30 is what? Good. It's a little slow, 9 o'clock service. There's still coffee back there. So yeah, about 600 times. How many, be honest, how many would say, yeah, at some point I've complained about the weather in the last 30 days? Let's see your hands. There you go. All right, there you go. At some point I've complained about drivers in said weather. Okay. Who has maybe sworn under their breath at a piece of technology? Some of you guys are lying right now. Yeah, students, how many of you complained about homework? Be honest. Come on. Yeah, whiners. Whiners. So are you insulted? Did I say that? Maybe a little bit. Why? Because you've been taught your whole life that to complain is like an emotional deficiency. You've been taught your whole life that to complain is a sin thing, when actually it's not a sin thing, it's a human thing. The Bible is full of godly people who complain. Moses complained. Job complained. A third of the Psalms, 1/3 of the songbook of the Bible is what we call lament psalms, which are songs of complaining to God. Heck, even Jesus complained. If you've complained, you're in good company. It's not should you complain. The question is, how do you complain? And it makes a huge, huge difference. Because here's the truth. The longer you live, the more you're going to have to complain about. And do you know someone who is maybe later in years, and they're just kind of bitter? They've kind of turned inward. They're just kind of grumpy. It's like they're a little judgy, maybe. And whatever you say, like they take the negative way of interpreting that. You've seen that. And yet, have you seen someone on the other side who's like they're later in years, and there's this incredible joy. And it seems like nothing gets them down. And it's like they're always ready to be a catalyst for something good for somebody else. You know people like that? What's the difference? The difference is it's not that this group over here doesn't have anything to complain about. It's that they've learned the art of, you might call it redemptive complaint. They've learned the art of how to complain like a Christian, which is radically different than the way the world wants you to complain. How about you? Do you feel guilty when you have a legitimate complaint? Do you shove it down? Do you go scorched earth on people? Psalm 55, which Maya just read, is a masterclass in redemptive lament. A masterclass. And the basic idea is this, is what should I do with my complaints? You cast them on the Lord. You cast your burden on the Lord. You complain like a Christian. And by the end of this message, my hope and my prayer is that you should know enough about Psalm 55 that you can go home immediately today and pray your complaints. And not only will you feel an immediate sense of relief, like a lift off your chest, but you're going to be empowered to bear the burdens of others. So Psalm 55 is going to teach us two things about praying your complaints. Why and how. Why you must complain, and how to complain like a Christian. So let's dive in. Why you must complain. David starts in verse 1. Give ear to my prayer, O God, and hide not yourself from my plea for mercy. Attend to me and answer me. I am restless in my complaint, and I moan. Is David embarrassed of his complaint? Is he self-conscious? You know he's like writing this and saying this in front of other people. He's not embarrassed or self-conscious. Why not? It's almost as if he knows something about God that most of us either don't know or are constantly forgetting. And it's this. It's that there are certain prayers that God always answers. Every single time. What are they? Look in verse 3. He says, because of the noise of the enemy, because of the oppression of the wicked, they drop trouble on me. In anger, they bear a grudge against me. What does David know will move God's heart every time? What will demand a response in God? You know what it is? He says it. It's a clamoring, angry enemy who's going after you. Oppression. God will never not answer that prayer. And so David knows, I don't have to be shy. This is a prayer God's going to answer every time. And there's actually a whole backstory to this psalm. It's in 2 Samuel, what's happening, if you know kind of the biography of David. He's the rightful king of Israel. It's his job to teach everyone to obey the Torah and to worship God and to be this light to the whole world. But what's happened is his own son, Absalom, has staged a coup. And his best friend, his counselor, his chief of staff, a man named Ahithophel, has taken Absalom's side. And they should have had his back, but they stabbed him in the back. And now he's outside the city. and they're hunting him down. They want his head on a stake. And this is what David's praying. He said, Lord, this isn't right. And he says that they drop trouble on me. That word drop literally means dump. They're dumping their problems on me. I'm buried in this huge pile of trouble because of what they did. Has anyone ever dumped trouble on you? You know, imagine you're helping me move. Thank you. And, pizza's there. It's waiting for us. But we have to carry a couch down the stairs. And I'm at the top, and you're at the bottom. And it's this huge flight of stairs. And it's super heavy. And you're carrying most of the weight. And we're halfway down, right when you're most exhausted. And I say, you know what? I'm too tired. And I drop it. Rude. What just happened? I just let go of my end of the bargain, didn't I? I just dumped my problems on you. And you're left staggering and shaking, and you might get hurt. And this is what David's describing. He's saying they've dumped trouble on me. They didn't hold up their end of the bargain. They betrayed me. This happens all the time. I'm going to give you a few examples. Starting with a small one and showing you how this scales. So August, our youngest, he's not in here, he's over there. He's a Packer fan, okay? So he loves the Packers, but he's also a Justin Jefferson fan. So for Christmas, he asked for a Vikings hoodie and hat. And so we gave it to him. I'm a Vikings fan, so I was like, sweet. It was hard for Bree, but she did it, so that's real love. So we gave it to him, and he wore it to the Bree's kind of extended family Christmas. So we went to Appleton. They're all green and gold there. And Decker, one of the cousins, he's about August's age, he runs out of the house because he knows August is here. We pull up. August steps out of the van in his Vikings jersey, and I kid you not, Decker stopped like someone just punched him in the face. And his jaw was hanging down. And he was like, bro, how disrespectful. And he was dead serious. You guys, I'm not even joking. It took like 30 minutes for him to like calm down, for them to play together. Why? He was betrayed by August, right? Earlier this week, we were sitting as a teaching team. Pastor David, who's a campus pastor at the North Side, he was telling us about how he had this gift card to a restaurant. And so he called in. He was going to pick up the order. Dinner for his whole family. So he pays. He drives all the way there from Fitchburg to the east side, and he gets there, and the restaurant is closed. No one's even there. And he's like looking around. It's completely dark. And he's like, what's the deal? And we're all getting mad with him. We're like, we're going to storm the gates. And he was fine. He ended up calling, and he got his money back, and they took care of him. But what just happened? They didn't hold up their end of the bargain. They betrayed him. So what if it's not just football or dinner? What if it's a big deal? What do you do when your boss takes credit for your work? What do you do when your boss throws you under the bus? What do you do when a friend of yours calls to tell you that she saw your boyfriend hanging out with another girl? What do you do when you're a black pastor up in Appleton? This happened not that long ago, and white supremacists hold a rally in your town, and not a single white pastor stands up for you. In the book "The Body Keeps the Score," psychologist Bessel van der Kolk tells us that 1 in 5 Americans was sexually molested as a child. 1 in 4 was beaten by a parent to the point of a mark being left on the body. And 1 in 8 witnessed their mother being beaten or hit. What do you do? I want to show you a picture. This is not an Instagram filter. This is actually taken in 1989. And that kid over there is me. I was about 6, That's my brother Christopher, and that's Bruce. Bruce is our biological dad. So we were at the airport in Minneapolis because we had just spent a week with him. And it was a great week. It was a fun week. But I only have about 5 or 6 pictures like this with me and my dad. Because when I was born, he flaked out. He just flaked out on us. He wasn't a bad guy. He wasn't violent. He was a hard worker, but he didn't hold up his end of the bargain. Barely knew him. I have all these kind of random memories of visits with him, and I never once recall feeling like he would do for me what dads are supposed to do for their boys. And to this day, I look at this deep insecurity that I have. It never seems to go away, this deep need to be pursued, to impress people, to win people's favor. And I wonder, how differently might life have been for me if my dad had held up his end of the bargain and just been around instead of flaking out? My friends, this is why we have to learn to pray our complaints. You have to learn to pray your complaints because you were made for justice, you were made for faithfulness and for loyalty and fidelity and love, but you live in a world ravaged by sin. And you've been left holding the bag by people who have betrayed you in big and small ways. And we shouldn't be surprised by this. Jesus himself said in Matthew 24, many will fall away and betray one another. And this is why we have to complain. Whether you know it or not, you're carrying the weight of troubles that people have dumped on you. And if you don't complain redemptively, David actually describes what starts to happen. In verses 4 through 15, he tells us 4 things. These are like 4 signs that you're carrying weight. And that you really shouldn't be carrying. Number 1, I'm going to try to go through these quickly. Verse 4, my heart is in anguish within me. The terrors of death have fallen upon me. Fear and trembling have come upon me. Horror overwhelms me. Do you see the words? Anguish, terror, fear, horror. This word overwhelms could be translated something like waves are crashing on me. Waves of horror. Waves of dread. And if you've ever talked to someone who has PTSD, you know that David's describing a panic attack. This is a panic attack that he's having because he's been betrayed. And this doesn't happen to everyone, but it can happen if you don't know how to pray your complaints. You ever experienced one of those? I have. They're rough. There's a trigger. The adrenaline just it rises, your heart is racing, your mind is racing, you might feel like you're having a heart attack. Sometimes the back of your head gets like freezing cold all of a sudden. You feel this like a brick in your stomach, just this dense pit. And you can't think straight. And psychologists say that panic attacks are actually a common sign of what they call betrayal trauma. So that's one. Here's another one that David experiences, escapism. Escapism. He says in verse 6, oh, that I had wings like a dove. I wish I could fly away and be at rest. Yes, I would wander far away. I would lodge in the wilderness. I would hurry to find a shelter. Anywhere but here, this raging storm and tempest. You ever dreamed of running away? Flying away? David's daydreaming about getting away from it all. It's avoidance. It's escapism. It's one of the signs. You ever felt like it's just hard to be present in the moment? Often it's this longing to be anywhere but here, and it could look like a whole bunch of things. It could be mindlessly scrolling through the lives of other people in your app of choice. It could be snacking even though you're not hungry. It could be this incessant need to be at work or to be at the gym or to be checking email or buying stuff. It's escapism. The next one is a big one. It's loss of trust. He says in verse 9, I only have a few words here, but I'm going to read the whole section. Destroy, O Lord, divide their tongues. That, by the way, is a hyperlink back to the story of Babel. David's saying, your own city, God, has gotten it so bad, it's as bad as Babel. So just divide their tongues, confuse their languages. He says, for I see violence and strife in the city. Day and night they go around on its walls. Iniquity and trouble are within it. Ruin is in its midst. Oppression and fraud do not depart from its marketplace. You see what he's grappling with the carnage of this betrayal. This is his city. He was responsible for it, and everything's falling apart. And there's not a single mention of forgiveness. There's no positivity here. There's no hope for him. He's saying this is terrible. His ability to trust in people is completely dried up. And you know people who are just so cynical about everything, about politics, about police, about the system, the economy. That's where David is. But it's not just the system, it's also personal too. Look what he says in verse 12. For it is not an enemy who taunts me. I could handle that. It's you. It's my companion, my familiar friend. Do you remember when, I used to go to church with this guy. We were in covenant together. We promised to be faithful to one another. This is David saying, I cannot believe it. This is some Philistine. This is my own flesh and blood. We used to go to church together. He's saying, who are you? I don't even know who you are. You should have had my back, but you stabbed me in the back. And this is the shock of discovering maybe your spouse has been cheating. It's the shock that we feel every time we hear another story of some priest or some pastor who's abusing children. You know what this does to us? We lose the ability to trust. If you find yourself cynical, you find yourself, it's hard to let people in, you might be carrying a weight that you shouldn't be carrying. Avoiding intimacy. And there are more. There are lots more we could talk about, but there's only one more in Psalm 55. And it's this. You could call it a lack of closure. He says in verse 15, let death steal over them. Let them go down to Sheol alive, for evil is in their dwelling place and in their heart. This is where David just gets so raw and real. He's saying, let death steal. Let death be like a robber. Let it just suddenly come. He's painting a word picture. He's like, Lord, I wish, I'm not sure if this is right, probably not, but I wish the earth would just open up and swallow my enemies up whole. You ever wished someone would just disappear from your life? You ever given up hope of reconciliation? Thinking maybe the only possible way to make things better is just for them to disappear forever. How are you doing with this? Probably by now you know. You know the weight that you carry. You know who dumped it on you. And maybe you've complained. Maybe you've vented. Maybe you've gotten some help. Maybe not. You know, there are lots of ways to deal with betrayal. Your family probably has given you some sayings, some slogans that maybe have been helpful. You can find a lot of ways to deal with betrayal in the bestseller books. But Psalm 55 is offering something so refreshing, you guys. This psalm is going to hold a powerful key. It'll be your secret weapon that will not only immediately lift the weight off your shoulders, but also turn you into a catalyst for healing and for change. It's going to teach us how to pray like a Christian. How to complain like a Christian. So I'm going to give you 3 transformative instructions. Here we go. First one, pray like God has already answered. Pray like God has already answered. What do I mean? Look in verse 16. David says, but I call to God and the Lord will save me. Evening and morning and at noon, I'll utter my complaint and I'll moan. He hears my voice. Now, one of the common ways to deal with betrayal in our culture is what I would just call the religious approach. What is that? The religious approach says, call out to God. Pray. Do it. Who knows? Maybe if you're a good enough person, maybe if God doesn't have anything better to do, maybe it'll do you some good. But don't expect much, because let's be honest, God really has a lot of stuff on his plate, and he might have better things to do than listen to you whine about your feelings. And we have people then who have gone the religious approach, and not only are they traumatized by the betrayal, but now they have this thick layer of guilt pressing down on them. And they have this contorted picture of a God who maybe cares about your eternal salvation, but doesn't give a rip about your emotional pain. It's a religious approach. What does David say? Look again. He says, I'll call out to God. Now that's what you would expect in a religious text like the Bible. But what you don't expect is what he says next. I'll call out to God, and the Lord will save me. You expect him to say, I hope he saves me, or I hope I do well enough to please him so that he might want to save me. But here he is, and by the way, he doesn't deserve to pray this way because he knows he's a betrayer himself. Remember the Bathsheba story? And yet here he is, boldly, audaciously saying, I call out to God, the Lord will save me. He listens to me. He listens. How can David believe this? Can you believe how audacious he is? What does he know about God that we don't? I'll tell you. David knows beyond the shadow of a doubt that while there might be lots of so-called gods out there who are indifferent to pain, that is not the God of the Bible. It's not the God of the Bible. Religion says God is near to the moral. The Bible says God is near to the brokenhearted. Religion says God's near to those who pray eloquently. The Bible says God is near to those who pray desperately. Do you know that? Do you believe that? When you pray, who do you think you're praying to? You're praying to a God who is listening, who responds. You say, now wait a second, how does David know that? Well, David knows that because that's the story of his people, the story of Israel. When they cried out to God as slaves in Egypt, he sent Moses. When they cried out to God under the oppression of the Philistines, he sent Samson. When they cried out to God under the weight and the fear of Goliath, they sent David, a shepherd boy. This is a God who responds, and David he knew all the prophecies. He knew that a Messiah was coming. And you say, well, hold on, I've prayed and God hasn't answered my prayers. Well, not so fast. Not so fast. You see that phrase, the Lord will save me? This is a very, very interesting phrase in Hebrew. It's only a couple letters away from a name. That's the verb form of the name. The name is Yehoshua. You know what name that is? That's the name of Jesus. Do you see? Do you see what David's saying? The Lord will save me. That is the name of Jesus. Jesus is God saving you. Jesus is God saving you. Do you understand what this means, you guys? This is huge. This changes how we pray. Because if you're like me, you've gone to churches where people like me, well-meaning people, stand up and they don't know how to talk about unanswered prayer. And they'll say things like, sometimes God's answer is yes, sometimes his answer is no, and sometimes it's not yet. I'm sorry, but that's garbage. You're not going to find that in the Bible anywhere. Do you know what you find in the Bible? You find people across all ages and generations of every language crying out for someone to save them from their sin and evil and pain. And God's resounding answer to every one of those prayers was for himself to come into our mess, to become our sin and evil and pain. And my friends, Jesus is God's answer to every prayer you've ever prayed. If God changed every one of your circumstances, if he made every situation that you wish was better, if he did that and you didn't have Jesus, you would have nothing. On the other hand, if you prayed for God to change your situations and your circumstances, and he didn't do any of that, but you died having Jesus, my friends, you would have everything. Jesus is God's answer to every prayer. Every time you speak the name of Jesus, you are reminding yourself that God has and is answering the cry of your broken heart. My friends, there's no such thing as an unanswered prayer. The answer is Jesus. Lord, help, I've been betrayed. Look to Jesus. Lord, I'm having a panic attack. Jesus says, I am here. Lord, if nobody cares, and Jesus says, look, where 2 or more of your brothers and sisters are gathered, I am there in healing and power and comfort. So what do you do with your complaint? You pray like a Christian. Don't pray like a religious person. Pray like God has already answered your prayer. That's the first one. Number 2, pray like it's not your fight. Pray like it's not your fight. Now we have to skip down to verse 23. We'll come back up. David says, but you, O God, will cast them down in the pit of destruction. Men of blood and treachery shall not live out half their days. And all of us nice Midwest Christians are going, why is this in the Bible? Like, you realize this is the songbook of the Hebrew people? Like, they would sing these songs in church. Could you imagine? Sing, Lord, would you just kill all those blood and treachery? Like, could you imagine that level of honesty? What's this doing? We live in the Midwest where we're nice and we don't have any enemies. And if God gets angry at his enemies, yikes, we don't really know what to do with that because we're nicer than God. And except we really do have enemies. We're just pretending that we don't because we're embarrassed to admit it. And David has no mask. He's just startlingly honest. He said, these are people of blood and treachery. God cast them down. And someone here is saying, finally a pastor who's real, authentic, like he's saying it how it is. This is what we need. We need to get rid of all this political correctness and stop tiptoeing around. And this I call this the scorched earth approach. It's where you come in and blast your enemies. Someone's hurt you, you speak your mind. And then what happens? You know what happens in a world, in a scorched earth approach? We all lose. You know why? Because we're all betrayers. Nobody doesn't get canceled in a scorched earth approach. And so we have these 2 options. You can either be wishy-washy or you can be condemning. And depending on how you were raised, you probably lean more toward one approach or the other. You either blow off God's justice and pretend everything's fine when it's not, or you blow off his mercy and you go for the blood of your enemies. And here's where we see David finding the heart of God. Jump back up to verse 18. He redeems my soul in safety from the battle I wage, for many are arrayed against me. Notice, David does not pray that God would save him from his enemies. What does he pray? That God would save him from the battle. David's saying, Lord, as much as I wish that you would just get these people out of my life, I know this is a fight I cannot win. I can't win this fight. God, if it were up to me, these betrayers would burn in hell. But this isn't my fight. You're the judge. And you will do what I never could because you see their hearts and I can't. And the Christian approach is radically different. You have to pray like it's not your fight. Because it's not. You have to do better than Midwest nice. You have to stop thinking that you're nicer than God. God does not need us to be merciful on his behalf. What if you dared to tell God how you really feel? To actually name the people who have hurt you. And to tell God, to be honest with him. Do you understand the weight it would lift off of your shoulders? God's not going to gasp and clutch his pearls. He didn't grow up in the Midwest. Do you really think that God doesn't already know? And then only after you've become honest and you've gotten to the heart of the pain, only then, right before the rage starts to rise up, then you have to give the fight to God. Because the battle that you have is not against your enemies, it's against your own inner control freak. Your own inner judge that wants to condemn everybody. You got to turn that over to God. You got to get off the bench. This is a battle you'll never win. You're not wise enough. You're not loving enough. You're not strong enough. But Jesus is. So let's give him the fight. How do you pray how do you complain like a Christian? You pray like God's already answered. You pray like it's not your fight. And you pray to a wonderful counselor. A wonderful counselor. Look in verse 20. My companion, David repeats himself. He's already said this, but he says it again. My companion stretched out his hand against his friends. He violated his covenant. His speech, was smooth as butter, yet war was in his heart. His words were softer than oil, yet they were drawn swords. And this is one of the surprises in the Psalms. David is not concise. He keeps repeating himself. Have you ever been around someone who does that? Why do they do that? It's because they desperately need to be heard. They need people to get it. You need people to get it. When you've been hurt, you have to have someone who understands, someone who hurts with you, someone who gets that you have been stabbed in the back by someone who should have had your back. And we've gotten a lot better at this, I think, in our culture in the last few decades. We've gotten a lot better at listening and empathizing, and we've gotten a lot better, like there's less of a stigma now about going to like a counselor. I've greatly benefited from counselors in my life, accepting our need to be understood. But here's, as much as I've benefited from counseling, one of the things a good counselor, by the way, we have great counselors who go right here. I'm so grateful for them. One of the things that a good counselor will admit is they don't always have the answers. Because they don't. A good counselor can affirm you, but she can't identify with you. A good counselor can offer great insight, but they can't heal you. A good counselor can be with you for an hour a week, but she can't be with you 24 hours a day. And what you need is not less than a counselor, you need more. You need someone who's actually experienced what you've been through, who's walked through the fire without sinning. They've walked through it and they've been faithful, perfectly wise, perfectly loving. And you need that person to never ever leave your side. And this is why Isaiah calls the Messiah wonderful counselor. A counselor that has walked through the fire before you and will walk with you through it right now, who will never leave or forsake you, but fill you with supernatural power and joy in the Holy Spirit. My friends, do you realize that Jesus was betrayed with the kiss of a friend, and never once did he swear under his breath? Never once did he look at Judas and say, "You rotten hypocrite, I hope you burn in hell." My friends, you and I need a counselor who understands what it means to be stabbed in the back and yet never retaliated. You and I need a counselor. If your dad walked out on you, you need a wonderful counselor who's been cut off by his father and yet never was still perfectly obedient. You have a spouse that has stabbed you in the back, cheated on you. You need a wonderful counselor who is a husband who understands what it's like to have his bride give herself to other men, yet never giving up on his blazing love for her. And my friends, in the Bible, Jesus says all of those things. He doesn't just understand your betrayal in theory. He knows the searing pain of it. He doesn't just know how to be righteous hypothetically. He's actually done it. He won't kick you out after your session is over. He will remain with you. He doesn't just offer strategies. He offers resurrection power. And when you pray your complaint, pray to a wonderful counselor. And David ends Psalm 55 with a little mini sermon. Little mini sermon. It's a summary of the whole psalm, and it could be a summary of really the whole gospel. He says to the people around him, and he says to us, cast your burden on the Lord. He will sustain you. He will never permit the righteous to be moved. What does that mean? What does that feel like to cast your burden on the Lord? David understood that God is the only one strong enough to take everything that people have dumped on you, to take that on himself. David knew that. But there's something he didn't know that we do. There's a parable of two friends who were digging a well. And they were using a shovel. This is a long time ago. They're using a shovel to dig a narrow shaft all the way down. And eventually they hit rock. And so they slowly had to chip away at the rocks, and they had to carry them up with a harness with a big sack. One guy would go up at a time carrying these boulders up. And finally, once they were about 70 feet down, they hit the water table. And they had one massive stone to carry up at the end. And so one guy volunteered to carry it. He wrapped the harness around himself, and he had this huge stone over his shoulder, this 80-pound boulder. And he was slowly going up and up and up, 70 feet up. And right as he came to the edge of the well, the harness snaps. And he grabs the end of the well. And the bag with the rock is pulling him down. And he's shaking, so heavy. And he knows if he lets go of the well, he's going to fall, and he and his friend will both die. But if he lets go of the bag, this rock will crush his friend. And so he's hanging on. And he's getting more and more tired. And his friend says, "Let it go. Let it go." And the man refuses. And he tries to hang on as long as he can. And his friend is crying, and he says, "Let it go." And with tears in his eyes, the man lets it go. And there are 5 seconds of the most terrifying silence, and then a sickening crash. And his friend is crushed. And he pulls himself out of the well, sobbing with infinite gratitude at his friend who just saved his life. And my friends, you've been left holding the bag. You have been betrayed in a world broken by sin. You're carrying a weight, whether you know it or not, that you were never meant to carry. And my friends, it's killing you. But Jesus is the man at the bottom of the well saying, "Drop it. Cast your burden on me." And it's the only way. It's the only way to survive. See, the only way to survive the trouble that people have been dropping on you your whole life. Jesus is divinity crushed so that you could be free of the weight. And my friends, Jesus is at the bottom of the well of all of humanity. And on the cross, he took the crushing weight of all of the betrayal and the treachery and the abuse and the treason. And as tragic as that is, it's not the end of the story. Because Jesus didn't stay crushed. He rose again from the dead. He exploded out from under the rubble of all of humanity's betrayal. And the Holy Spirit infused him with resurrection power. And that's the same Spirit you have in you right now if you're a follower of Christ. You have supernatural power now to no longer be a betrayer, to no longer let go of your end of the bargain and dump your trouble on other people. Rather, you have new power now to become part of a new human family that gladly bears one another's burdens. Cast your burdens on the Lord. He will save you. We're going to sing In Christ Alone. I encourage you to reflect, to pray, and then we'll close.